Though it's not especially true these days, there was a time when fans used to rue over what could have been when it came to comic book films. Missed storytelling opportunities, weird castings, but perhaps the most frustrating thing was that heroes and villains all ditched their colourful comics outfits for dark greys and blacks. It was a contrast best exemplified in Fox's X-Men movies, which, seemingly not content in wasting many of the comics' characters to begin with, had to make everything just that little bit less colourful too. Yes, I was expecting yellow spandex James Marsden Cyclops, thank you. We'll ignore the many behind-the-scenes permutations that birthed the Marvel Cinematic Universe's designs, as it's already been covered elsewhere. Besides, the contrast is far greater between the concept art for these older comic book films and what eventually made it on the screen. And, oh lordy, what could have been. I'm Ewan, this is What Culture Comics, and here are 8 superhero concept designs better than what we actually got. Number 8. Daredevil 2003. As far as early noughties comic book films go, Daredevil isn't that bad. The director's cut is actually quite serviceable, and though there's no getting away from Matt Murdock sparring with Elektra at a playground of all places, it's fairly obvious that Mark Steven Johnson's project had all the pieces to make a compelling adaptation of Marvel's Man Without Fear. But then there was the costume design. Jennifer Garner's Elektra look was weirdly nondescript, but Ben Affleck's Daredevil suit was relatively faithful, being the first to adapt Wally Wood's iconic redesign to the big screen. Although if there was criticism to share, it's that it was very leathery. Like, so leathery, I doubt the Man Without Fear could move around all stealthy-like, lest he let off an uncontrolled squeak. It was okay, but concept art for the film originally revealed a different look for the character, one that managed to provide an update on Murdock's infamous armored look from the 90s. With armor plating, straps, and pouches, this Daredevil looked well and truly prepared for crime fighting, as opposed to the other, who went to sleep in a leaky coffin. Number 7. Batman v Superman Dawn of Justice. Although the final Batsuit featured in Batman v Superman is just about the best we've ever seen in live action, with fans finally getting to see some grey mixed in with the black, it also was very Frank Miller-y. I mean, that's not necessarily a bad thing, pretty much all of BVS roots itself in Miller's DC iconography, but in building a franchise, a more appealing aesthetic could probably have been optioned. Turns out there was, but the designs never made it beyond the conceptual stage. Designed in conjunction with Michael Wilkinson, the Batsuit concepts developed by Jared S. Morantz combine the best of both worlds, showcasing a high-tech suit that even has the white eyes featured both in the comics and in animated adaptations of the Caped Crusader 2. It's a look tailor-made for a superhero franchise, as opposed to the other, which fills a niche for a fan of one particular author's works. On the bright side, the Batman design for the upcoming Matt Reeves film looks absolutely stunning. Number 6. Jean Grey, Cyclops, and Mystique, X-Men Apocalypse. After getting on a good run of sorts with First Class, Days of Future Past, The Wolverine, and Deadpool, Fox's X-Men series reverted to type with X-Men Apocalypse, a film set in the 80s involving one of the X-Men's most famous comic book villains. Those who stuck with the film will already know that it teased the team's more comics-accurate outfits at the ending, but for most of it, they're stuck in what can only be described as a bunch of generic flight suits. While those final outfits are great too, they still managed to fall short of what was teased in the film's concept art, which also showed off a different actor in the role of Jean Grey. Alan Villanueva's art for the film actually shows Elle Fanning in the part of Jean, with the actor having apparently topped Fox's shortlist for the part prior to the casting of Sophie Turner. In any case, the outfit is classic X-Men through and through, and though Cyclops 2 got a more comics-accurate costume in the finale, it doesn't look quite as good as it did at the conceptual stage, with costume designer Joshua James Shaw having gone all out with classic suits for him and Mystique. Number 5. Apocalypse, also X-Men Apocalypse. Funnily enough, it wasn't the X-Men's costumes that managed to suffer the most in Apocalypse, but rather the eponymous villain himself. Played by the formidable Oscar Isaac, there are few villains as renowned in the X-Men mythos. Apocalypse should have been the franchise's Thanos moment, but instead, Isaac's character ended up looking like a big-budget Ivan Ooze, doing little else in the story other than manipulating his followers and blowing the occasional thing up. The original design for the character, however, actually makes him look a whole lot more like his comic book self. Though the final Apocalypse from the film did retain more of his blue/pale comic book looks, there was something about the prosthetics that were all wrong. The concept pictured here, though, gets everything right. He's sleek, sinister, and the looks accomplished without the pantomime element thrown in, an improvement all around. Number 4. Scarecrow, Suicide Squad. Although the Oscar-winning Suicide Squad did make for one of Warner Bros.' biggest misfires of the decade, aesthetically speaking, not much was wrong with it, Jared Leto's Joker aside. Margot Robbie looked the part as Harley Quinn, though some more elements from her classic costume wouldn't have gone amiss. Thank God the Suicide Squad film is changing that, I am so excited. And the uniforms for Katana, Captain Boomerang, and Deadshot all looked good too. It was only in the antagonist department where the film really stumbled visually, with both Cara Delevingne's Enchantress and Leto's Joker suffering when it came to wardrobe and makeup. Looking at the film's concept art, however, it looks as though Scarecrow was considered for a part. The design is certainly menacing, divesting from the Texas Chainsaw-esque mask donned by Cillian Murphy in Christopher Nolan's films, with the character given a full straw hat, a sack-like cape, and a menacing sickle to boot. Number 3. A more accurate Rhino, The Amazing Spider-Man 2. Though the first Amazing Spider-Man movie managed to largely provide a reinvigorating take on the Spidey mythos, with Andrew Garfield's Peter Parker and Emma Stone's Gwen Stacy possessing bags of chemistry, the sequel stumbled in a great many places, most notably with its villains. Though Jamie Foxx had all the potential to be a great version of Electro, and still does given he'll be reprising the role in the third MCU Spider-Man film, yeah, I know right? Paul Giamatti's Rhino was especially wasted, with the actor only making 2 appearances at either end of the film. The less that is said about Dane DeHaan's Goblin, the better. And though the design for Harry's Goblin wasn't top, Rhino's was especially controversial. Instead of wearing his classic Rhino suit from the comics, Giamatti was thrust into a giant rhino-like mech. Earlier concept art does, however, show the actor in a more comics-accurate suit, one you'd be more likely to find in the Gladiator's Armory than in Boston Dynamics' super-secret supervillain supplies division. It totally exists, I swear. Number 2. Green Goblin, Spider-Man. Sam Raimi's Spider-Man films are a superb love letter to the 60s Spidey stories told by Stan Lee, Steve Ditko, and John Romita Sr. Tonally, they actually mirror those comics beat for beat. It's only along aesthetic lines where they begin to diverge. Although the design for Peter's final costume was pretty much picture perfect, Willem Dafoe's Green Goblin suit did draw criticism for its expressionless nature. It also looked like a suit the Green Power Ranger could have worn in a past life, but that's that. Making this error even more mind-boggling was the fact that an early design for the suit actually offered us the perfect Goblin, one ripped straight from the comics. The design showcases a more authentic look for the Goblin, one that retains all the cartoony expressions of the character's comic self. It may have just proven too scary for audiences to stomach, but as far as looks go, they don't get much better. Why oh why did they have to go back to formula on this one? And number 1, the genuinely Fantastic Four, Fan-4-Stick. Josh Trank's ill-fated Fantastic Four reboot failed on pretty much every level, but it did have the makings of a genuinely compelling story hidden underneath. The casting itself was well done, with Michael B. Jordan in particular shining as Johnny Storm/the Human Torch. There was a clear chemistry between the actors, but with the film retreading all the mistakes that derailed the first series of films, plus some it didn't just for good measure, it wasn't meant to be. Dig deeper into the creative process, however, and the film's lost potential only becomes more apparent. Sporting a more heroic look and with all the characters in their iconic blue uniforms, Dave Raposa's concept for the film ticks all the boxes for how the group should have looked on screen. Ultimately, Trank and the others behind the project opted for a slightly more horror-tinged approach, with Mr. Fantastic having rings around his arms and Ben Grimm being used as a military weapon and not as the ever-loving blue-eyed thing from Yancey Street we all know and love. And that was just some of the superhero movie concept designs that never became a reality, but that would have been amazing. Let me know which one was your favorite down in the comments below, and feel free to share some other concepts you wish made it to the big screen. After that, it would be super appreciated if you could like the video and subscribe for more so you don't miss another upload going forward. Bye!